Did you know that Ethiopia adopted Christianity even before the Roman Empire? That's right. While Rome was still persecuting Christians, Ethiopia had already embraced the gospel and made it the foundation of its culture and society. Ethiopia is not just another African country with a forgotten place in history. It is a nation with a divine legacy, where Christianity became deeply ingrained long before it spread across Europe. But Ethiopia's story doesn't stop there. It's the only African nation that successfully resisted colonization, famously defeating Italy in 1896 at the Battle of Adwa, and again in the 20th century when they reclaimed their land after Mussolini's invasion. It was Ethiopia's deep Christian faith and belief in their divine protection that helped them stand firm against the colonizers. While much of Africa fell under European control, Ethiopia remained independent, holding on to its ancient Christian traditions. However, Ethiopia's religious commitment also had its consequences. The country, despite its rich history, remained relatively poor, as its unique traditions fostered a culture with weak work habits that struggled to modernize in the same way as other nations. But in Ethiopia's case, its spiritual wealth far outweighed any material poverty. If you think African countries don't have a voice in the Bible, Ethiopia is the exception. This ancient kingdom, with its roots deep in biblical prophecy, stands as a testament to God's enduring promise. So today, let's explore the biblical origins of Ethiopia, its rise as one of the earliest Christian nations, and its profound role in biblical prophecy. To understand Ethiopia's place in biblical history, we must start with its earliest mentions in the Bible as the land of Cush. Ethiopia, Cush, is mentioned as early as Genesis 2:13. Where it is one of the regions watered by the rivers flowing out of Eden. This places Ethiopia in the earliest biblical narratives as a land rich in resources and connected to the Garden of Eden. After the flood, the Bible gives us the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, which describes the descendants of Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and how they repopulated the earth. Ethiopia, Cush, is listed as one of the descendants of Ham, Noah's son, making it one of the oldest and most prominent nations in the biblical genealogies. In Genesis 10:6-8, the Bible records the sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteka. The sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. This passage is incredibly important because it establishes Cush, Ethiopia, as a direct descendant of Ham, linking Ethiopia to the earliest post-flood civilizations. Cush is also named alongside other major regions such as Egypt and Canaan, indicating its early significance as a nation. But perhaps the most fascinating part of this genealogy is the mention of Nimrod, a descendant of Cush, who is described as a mighty hunter and the first to establish kingdoms on earth. Nimrod is credited with founding some of the most powerful ancient cities, including Babel, Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Nineveh, Genesis 10:10-12. Nimrod's role as a founder of empires suggests that the descendants of Cush, including Ethiopia, were known for their power, influence, and ability to build great civilizations. This paints a picture of Ethiopia as not just a distant, isolated land, but as a nation deeply connected to the global powers of the ancient world. The lineage of Ham, through Cush, had a significant impact on the development of early civilizations, and Ethiopia's influence was evident from the earliest moments of human history. One of Ethiopia's most famous biblical connections is the story of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. In 1 Kings 10, We read how the Queen of Sheba traveled to Jerusalem to test Solomon's wisdom, bringing with her a great caravan of gold, spices, and precious stones. But the Ethiopian version of the story, found in the Kebra Nagast, adds an extraordinary detail. The Queen of Sheba and Solomon had a son together, Menelik I, who would go on to become the first ruler of the Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. According to Ethiopian tradition, Menelik brought the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Ethiopia, where it has remained ever since, hidden away under guard in the town of Aksum. This claim links Ethiopia directly to the biblical lineage of King David, making it one of the only nations outside of Israel to claim such a close connection to the covenant God made with Israel. The Solomonic dynasty would rule Ethiopia for more than 3,000 years, from Menelik the Fine all the way to the reign of Haile Selassie, Ethiopia's last emperor. This royal lineage helped solidify Ethiopia's role as a Christian nation with a unique place in God's plan. While much of Africa and the Middle East remained largely pagan, Ethiopia became a center of Christianity as early as the 4th century AD, long before the Roman Empire adopted Christianity under Constantine. The rise of the Kingdom of Aksum, which controlled major trade routes between the Roman Empire, India, and Persia, allowed Ethiopia to grow in wealth and influence. But the most remarkable part of Ethiopia's story during this time is its early adoption of Christianity. King Ezana, who ruled Aksum in the 4th century, was converted to Christianity by Frumentius, a Syrian missionary who had been captured as a boy and later became a trusted advisor to the king. With Ezana's conversion, Ethiopia became one of the first nations in the world to adopt Christianity as its state religion, even before Rome officially became a Christian empire. This transformation wasn't just religious, it was cultural. Ethiopian Christianity developed its own unique identity, blending biblical stories with local traditions. The Ge'ez language, Ethiopia's ancient script, became the language of the Bible and liturgy, creating a rich biblical literary tradition that has survived for centuries. While Rome was still learning the ways of Christianity, Ethiopia had already become a Christian stronghold. But Ethiopia's Christian faith wasn't just a spiritual transformation, it became a political and cultural backbone for the nation, especially as it faced challenges from foreign invaders. Ethiopia's unique position as a Christian nation helped it withstand one of the greatest challenges any African country has ever faced: European colonization. In 1896, Ethiopia achieved one of its greatest triumphs when it defeated Italy at the Battle of Adwa, securing its independence and becoming the only African nation to successfully resist European colonization during the scramble for Africa. It wasn't just Ethiopia's military might that led to victory. Many Ethiopians believed they were under God's protection because of their strong Christian faith. This faith-filled resolve led to their success in battle, despite the odds being stacked against them. The victory at Adwa has since become a symbol of African resilience and pride, showing that Ethiopia, with its ancient Christian traditions, was not to be subdued by European powers. Even when Mussolini's Italy invaded Ethiopia again in the 1930s under the fascist regime, Ethiopia's faith remained strong. Emperor Haile Selassie called upon the world's Christian nations for support, famously addressing the League of Nations. Though temporarily defeated, Selassie returned to power with the help of the Allies during World War II, and Ethiopia's independence was restored. This resilience, rooted in faith, allowed Ethiopia to become a symbol of African freedom, a nation that refused to bow to the colonial powers that dominated much of the rest of the continent. The Nile River has always been one of the most significant geographic features in biblical history, often associated with Egypt and the Exodus. But few realize that one of the main sources of the Nile, the Blue Nile, originates in the Ethiopian highlands. This makes Ethiopia a key player in the Nile's story, a river that has brought both life and destruction. In Exodus, we see the Nile turning to blood during the plagues, symbolizing God's judgment on Pharaoh and his oppression of the Israelites. But it's important to remember that the Nile's power comes from the waters of Ethiopia, a country that has remained independent from external forces while maintaining its ancient Christian identity. Today, Ethiopia's control over the Blue Nile remains a critical geopolitical issue. The construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, has sparked controversy with Egypt, which relies on the Nile for its water supply. This modern-day conflict over the Nile's waters echoes the biblical narratives surrounding the river and its significance for the nations. One of the most well-known New Testament stories about Ethiopia is the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:26-40. The eunuch, an official of the Queen of Ethiopia, was returning from Jerusalem after worshipping in the temple. On the road, he encounters Philip the evangelist, who explains the prophecy of Isaiah that the eunuch was reading. Moved by the message of Jesus Christ, the eunuch asks to be baptized, and Philip baptizes him on the spot. This moment is seen as the introduction of Christianity to Ethiopia, long before the rise of the Aksumite kingdom. This story holds prophetic significance. In Zephaniah 3:10, God declares that from beyond the rivers of Cush, Ethiopia, his people will bring offerings. This verse has been interpreted as a reference to the spread of Christianity to Ethiopia and the eventual return of the Jewish diaspora to Israel from Africa. Ethiopia's story isn't just about its ancient past, it has a role to play in the end times as well. In Ezekiel 38 verse 5, Ethiopia, Cush, is mentioned as one of the nations that will join the alliance of Gog in the final battle against Israel. This prophetic reference places Ethiopia at the heart of future biblical prophecy, suggesting that the nation will be a significant player in the events leading up to the return of Christ. Ethiopia's story is one of faith, resilience, and divine purpose. As one of the first Christian nations, Ethiopia has maintained its ancient traditions and resisted the forces that sought to conquer it. Its biblical connections, from the Queen of Sheba to its role in end-time prophecy, make it one of the most fascinating nations in biblical history. As the world continues to unfold, Ethiopia remains a nation deeply connected to God's story, a symbol of the divine legacy that continues to shape the world. Its spiritual richness, unique Christian traditions, and prophetic significance ensure that Ethiopia's place in God's plan will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching Deep Bible Stories. If this exploration of Ethiopia's biblical history has opened your eyes to new insights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. For more ways to support Deep Bible Stories, check the description below.